My name is Brandon Hayes, and for most of my life, I believed I had it all. A stable job as a regional sales director in Atlanta, a comfortable home in a quiet suburb, and a loving family that I thought was unbreakable. My wife, Melissa, had always been my rock, and I trusted her implicitly. We built our life together on shared routines, weekend family outings, and promises that nothing could come between us. That was until one seemingly ordinary Saturday changed everything. It was a bright morning when Melissa announced that she was going shopping with her girlfriends. She smiled sweetly, insisting that it was just a fun day out, a chance for some me time. I nodded, feeling content that she would enjoy herself. After all, I believe that a little retail therapy never hurt anyone. I spent the day at work, buried under meetings and deadlines, trusting that our home remained as it always had been, filled with warmth and stability. That evening, as I pulled into our driveway, I noticed something unusual. My keys jingled as I unlocked the car, and when I stepped inside, something caught my eye on the back seat. There, lying on the passenger side, was a wallet. Not just any wallet. It was a men's wallet, one that I certainly hadn't seen before. My heart sank. I carefully opened it, scanning the contents. Several credit cards, a driver's license with a name I didn't recognize, and a few folded receipts from upscale establishments. A chill ran down my spine. Melissa had told me she was off with her girlfriends. Yet here was evidence suggesting otherwise. That I sat in the car for several long minutes, my mind racing. Questions swirled. Who was this man? Was Melissa lying to me all these years? How deep did this deception go? The wallet felt heavy in my hand, a tangible reminder that my perfect life might be nothing but an illusion. I couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't a one-time mistake. It was a clue, one that hinted at a secret life Melissa had been hiding behind carefully constructed lies. When I finally drove home, the familiar sight of our house did little to comfort me. Instead, every window, every shadow, seemed to whisper the possibility of betrayal. I tried to act normal when I stepped inside. Melissa was in the kitchen, preparing dinner as if nothing were amiss, her smile polite but her eyes avoiding mine for just a moment too long. Our daughter played quietly in the living room, unaware of the storm brewing behind my eyes. That night after dinner, I couldn't eat. I retreated to my study, the wallet still clutched tightly in my hand, and began piecing together every clue I could find. I scrolled through our shared calendar, reread text messages from Melissa, and even checked our home security footage. Every little detail began to tell a story. The extra hours Melissa claimed she spent at the mall, the vague replies when I asked about her plans, and the subtle changes in her routine that I had once ignored. I recalled a memory from a few weeks ago, Melissa's casual mention of a late work meeting. At the time, I'd brushed it off. But now, in the cold light of evidence, that meeting took on a new, sinister meaning. I wondered if she had been using that excuse to cover up trips that had nothing to do with her job at all. The possibility gnawed at me relentlessly by midnight. I had compiled a rough digital dossier. Screenshots of messages, dates and times when she'd been absent from home, and even a few blurry security camera stills from our driveway showing an unfamiliar car parked outside around the same times. Every piece of evidence pointed to one inescapable conclusion. Melissa had been lying to me for far too long. I couldn't sleep that night. Lying in bed, I listened to the silence and let the questions churn in my mind. My heart ached with the realization that the family I had believed in was built on a foundation of deception. I vowed to uncover the entire truth, even if it meant confronting my worst nightmares. I promised myself that when I had all the answers, I wouldn't simply let this betrayal go unpunished as the first light of dawn crept to the blinds. I made a silent vow. No matter how deep this deception ran, I would expose every lie and force Melissa to face the consequences. The image of that wallet, a symbol of a secret life, burned in my mind as I prepared for the long, dark road ahead. The next morning, I arrived at work with a heaviness in my chest that I couldn't shake. My thoughts were consumed by the wallet and the implications it carried. Throughout the day, while I sat in endless meetings and scribbled notes on conference calls, I was distracted by the nagging suspicion that my wife had been living a double life. Every email notification, every buzz from my phone, felt like it might reveal another piece of this puzzle. During lunch, I slipped away to a quiet corner of the office. I took out my phone and began sifting through our shared digital files and emails. I recalled that Melissa had once casually mentioned that her work meetings sometimes ran late, and I began to wonder if those meetings were merely a cover for something far more personal. I combed through her recent emails, and to my growing horror, I discovered an itinerary for an event in another state, a trip she had never mentioned to me. The itinerary detailed flight numbers, hotel reservations, and even a confirmation for a fancy dinner. Every detail was too elaborate for a casual business meeting. My pulse quickened as I saved a screenshot of the itinerary. I cross-referenced the dates with the times when I had noticed Melissa's unexplained absences. The pieces were coming together like a damning mosaic of betrayal. I began to wonder if the wallet was just the tip of the iceberg. Perhaps Melissa had been orchestrating elaborate lies, fabricating business trips to hide an affair that spanned far beyond a casual encounter. After work, I returned home with my mind in turmoil. The house, usually a sanctuary, felt suffocating. Melissa greeted me at the door with a smile that didn't reach her eyes, and I could sense an unspoken tension hanging in the air. I tried to hide my inner turmoil as I went about dinner, but every glance from her, every slight hesitation when she answered my questions, only deepened my suspicions. That night, once our daughter was asleep, I set up a small recorder in the living room and activated our security cameras to review footage from the past week. Every evening, I watched, hoping to catch a glimpse of the truth. And I did, multiple times. I saw Melissa leaving the house in her car at odd hours, the car's license plate unfamiliar to me. Sometimes she returned with a look of secret satisfaction. The reality was unmistakable. Her shopping trips were not what they seemed. I spent hours meticulously cataloging these occurrences, noting the dates and times, and comparing them with the itinerary I'd found. With every new piece of evidence, the betrayal cut deeper. I felt an overwhelming mix of grief, anger, and a cold determination that I would not allow this deception to go unpunished. I promised myself that I would confront Melissa and, if necessary, the man behind these lies, with a vengeance that would leave no doubt about the cost of betrayal. That night, as I lay awake in the darkness, the image of the wallet and the itinerary burned in my mind. I knew that the next step was inevitable. I would gather every shred of evidence until the truth was undeniable, and then I would confront her head-on. No more excuses, no more half-truths. I vowed that the price of every lie would be paid in full. With that grim promise echoing my thoughts, I drifted into a restless sleep, preparing for the storm that was to come. The weeks that followed, my investigation turned into a consuming obsession. I transformed our home into a secret war room, a place where every piece of evidence was carefully stored and meticulously analyzed. I installed hidden cameras in key areas and began reviewing footage nightly. Each clip revealed the same painful story. Melissa, supposedly out shopping with friends, was frequently seen in our driveway at unusual hours. I even caught glimpses of her entering a car with an unfamiliar face, a face that, through careful observation, I came to recognize as a regular presence in her secret outings. I began to piece together a timeline of her absences. Every time I left for work, I noted the exact time she departed and the time she returned. The gaps in our schedule grew more and more suspicious, aligning perfectly with the itinerary I discovered and the hidden footage I'd recorded. Slowly, the full extent of her deception began to emerge. Melissa had been fabricating an elaborate cover story, using the pretense of shopping trips to hide her true destination, a clandestine affair that spanned months, if not years. Determined to expose the full truth, I reached out to a private investigator I'd worked with in the past. I handed him copies of the evidence, the printed itinerary, the security footage, the screenshots of text messages, and even the wallet I had found that fateful day. The investigator confirmed what I'd feared. Melissa's supposed outings were a facade, and her real activities involved secret rendezvous with a man I still hadn't fully identified. The investigation revealed that on at least 3 occasions, she had been seen entering a high-end hotel in the city, a place that had no connection to any shopping trip. Each discovery cut deeper than the last, and the betrayal began to feel like an open wound that refused to heal. My heart was heavy with grief, but even more so with a growing, consuming rage. I no longer felt like the husband who once trusted unconditionally. I had become an avenger, driven by the need to reclaim my honor and expose every hidden lie. I spent endless nights training at the gym, turning my physical pain into a weapon. Every drop of sweat, every pounding of my fists on the punching bag was a promise that I would be ready for the final reckoning. I began planning my confrontation with Melissa with a chilling precision. I envisioned a night when the facade would finally crumble, a night when I would lay bare every secret before her. I drafted my words, rehearsing each phrase that would deliver the full weight of my betrayal and anger. I knew that this wasn't just about revenge. It was about ensuring that no one else would ever be deceived in the same way. I was preparing to be the one who collected the debt of every stolen moment. Yet even as I plotted my course, a flicker of the man I once was emerged in my memories. The loving husband, the gentle father. That memory, however, was quickly overshadowed by the unyielding drive for retribution. The evidence was undeniable, and my resolve was set. I would confront her, and I would make her understand that the cost of every lie was written in blood. One particularly stormy night, as the rain hammered relentlessly against my window, I sat alone in my study and reviewed the dossier one last time. The images, the text messages, the recorded footage, they were all there, a testament to the life built on deceit. I knew then that I was on the brink of a final, irreversible act. The path ahead was dark, and every step would be a descent into a realm of relentless vengeance. But I had no choice. My perfect family had been nothing but an illusion, and now, every lie must be repaid. The day of confrontation finally arrived with sky heavy with gray clouds and the promise of rain. I woke early, my mind a whirlwind of determination and cold fury. I reviewed every detail of the dossier once more, ensuring that not a single piece of evidence was missing. With a heavy heart and trembling resolve, I prepared for the moment when I would force Melissa to face the truth. That evening, after our daughter had been tucked in and the house fell silent, I called her into the living room. The space, once filled with the sound of our laughter and joy, now felt oppressive and suffocating. A stage set for the unraveling of our carefully constructed life. I laid the folder on the coffee table, each printed itinerary, screenshot, and video clip a silent indictment of her betrayal. "Melissa," I said, my voice low and unyielding, "explain this." For a long, agonizing moment, the room was silent. Then, with tears welling in her eyes, she began to speak haltingly, a series of fragmented excuses about stress, loneliness, and needing someone who understood her. Every word was a dagger to my heart. I listened in silence, each revelation confirming what I had already known. Our marriage had been a lie, a perfect facade built on deception. The confrontation grew heated as I demanded more details. Why had she lied about her business trips? Who was the man in those photos? "It's not what you think," she whispered desperately, but the evidence was overwhelming. I told her in no uncertain terms that every minute of betrayal would be repaid in full. My tone was cold and final, as I delivered an ultimatum that left no room for negotiation. I warned her that the consequences of her deception would extend beyond mere words. There would be a physical reckoning. Unable to bear the sight of her broken form, I left the living room that night, stepping out into the rain with a heavy heart and a mind already planning the next phase. I knew that I couldn't stop with just her confession. I still had to confront the man who had taken advantage of her trust, a man who had become the symbol of every lie. I vowed that he, too, would pay the ultimate price. As I drove away, the storm blurring the neon lights and washing away the remnants of what once was, I felt a grim satisfaction mixed with an unyielding emptiness. The perfect family we'd built was now nothing but a shattered dream. Every memory of laughter, every promise made under happier skies, was drowned in the relentless drive for retribution. My heart, though heavy with sorrow, burned with a cold determination. I had entered a realm where betrayal was met with violence, and there was no turning back. That I spent the following days in seclusion, recharging and planning my next move. I reconnected with the private investigator and pored over the evidence once more, ensuring that every detail was ironclad. My training continued, each session at the gym a testament to the man I had become, a man forged in pain, ready to deliver justice without mercy. I end the quiet solitude of my study. I began to chart out the final phase of my plan, to find and confront the man responsible for orchestrating the secret meetings, the man behind the lavish trips and hidden rendezvous. I discovered that he went by the name of Richard, a high-profile executive whose charm masked a ruthless ambition. Every new piece of evidence pointed to him as a linchpin in this web of deceit. That realization fueled me further. I was no longer just fighting for a broken marriage. I was fighting for every stolen moment, every lie that had tarnished what I once believed in. I vowed that by the time I was done, every traitor involved in this betrayal would know the full measure of my retribution. The final night of my retribution came like a dark omen. I tracked Richard to an upscale hotel where a high-stakes business event was underway, a perfect stage for his final confrontation. Dressed in black and armed with a full dossier of evidence, I arrived at the venue with a heart full of both sorrow and unyielding resolve. The rain had eased into a steady drizzle, and the city lights glimmered like distant beacons of hope, mocking the shattered illusions of the past. Inside the hotel, the atmosphere was charged with opulence and superficial charm. Richard, with his polished demeanor and confident smile, mingled effortlessly among high-powered executives and socialites. But I knew that behind that veneer lay a man who had been complicit in my wife's betrayal. I trailed him discreetly until I found an opportunity, when he stepped away from the crowd and into a quiet corridor. There, I confronted him. "Richard," I said, my voice cold and controlled, "I'm Brandon Hayes, and I'm here to collect the debt of every lie you've helped create." His eyes widened in shock, and for a split second, I saw a flicker of fear in his confident gaze. But he quickly masked it with arrogance. "I have no idea what you're talking about," he retorted, his tone icy. I held up the dossier, a testament to 10 years of deception. Every page, every photograph, every snippet of text was undeniable proof. "You know exactly what I'm talking about," I replied. "The stolen moments, the secret trips, and the lies that tore my family apart." In that tense corridor, the confrontation escalated quickly. Richard tried to back away, but I wasn't willing to let him escape. A brutal struggle ensued, a fight fueled by months of suppressed grief and rage. The clash of fists, the sound of scuffling footsteps, and the cold determination in my eyes filled that space with an intensity that was both terrifying and inevitable. Every blow I landed was a declaration that betrayal would never go unpunished. As Richard slumped against the wall, battered and defeated, I looked him in the eye and whispered, "This is only the beginning." I left the hotel that night with a heavy heart, knowing that while I had taken my retribution, nothing could bring back the perfect family that once was. The weight of the lies, the deception, and the loss pressed upon me with every step I took. Yet, even in that darkness, there was a flicker of grim satisfaction, a promise that every traitor would eventually pay the ultimate price. Over the next few days, I continued down this path of retribution, tracking every accomplice involved in the web of deceit that had ruined my life. I knew that the journey ahead would be long and fraught with danger, but I was resolved to see it through, no matter the cost. Each day, I fortified myself further, both physically and mentally, preparing for the final act of justice that would expose every hidden lie and ensure that the scars of betrayal would never fade. As I drove down a rain-slicked highway one final time, the storm of my past mingled with the uncertain promise of a future defined by retribution. My reflection in the rear-view mirror showed a man transformed, a man who had sacrificed his innocence for the cold certainty of vengeance. And with every mile that passed, I silently vowed in a world where trust is shattered by betrayal, an avenger must continue until every secret is laid bare and every traitor pays the ultimate price. I end the days after the brutal showdown at the hotel, the heavy silence of my new reality pressing on me with every passing moment. I drove around the city at night, the rain-washed streets reflecting my hardened face. Every red light, every shadow crossing my path, reminded me that nothing would ever be the same. I had taken a stand, unleashed my retribution, and though I had left Richard battered and broken, the price of betrayal still loomed over me like a relentless storm that he home. The atmosphere was frozen in time, a quiet, haunted space where every object seemed to echo with memories of a perfect family now lost. Melissa's once vibrant smile was now replaced by a pained, sorrowful look. Our daughter, oblivious to the adult conflicts that tore at the fabric of our lives, continued to play in her room as if the world were still whole. But every quiet moment was a reminder that I was now a man transformed, a man who had traded hope and forgiveness for an unyielding thirst for retribution. I threw myself into my work and training with ferocity I'd never known. Every session at the gym became a meditation on pain. Every grueling workout a reaffirmation that I was no longer the trusting husband of the past. My fists, once symbols of gentle care, had become instruments of punishment, honed by countless hours of relentless, unspoken rage. And as the physical bruises began to fade, the internal scars deepened, a permanent reminder of the betrayal I'd uncovered. But my retribution was not yet complete. The web of deceit stretched beyond just Melissa and Richard. It had tentacles that reached into the very core of our lives. I knew there were still names to uncover, secrets to expose, and accomplices who would help construct the elaborate facade. I began contacting old acquaintances, and even reached out to others who had been affected by similar betrayals. Their stories were filled with bitterness and regret, a chorus of voices echoing the same sentiment. Trust, once shattered, leaves nothing but scars. One particularly cold evening, I received an anonymous tip that the mastermind behind this entire network might be someone I'd never expected, a high-ranking executive at Melissa's company, known only by the initial J. The tip came with a location, a quiet, upscale bar in downtown Atlanta. I hesitated only for a moment before I decided to investigate. I parked my car in a shadowed corner and entered the bar, my eyes scanning the room for any sign of connection to the elaborate lies that had ruined my life. In the dim, flickering light of the bar, I noticed a man sitting alone at a corner table. His demeanor was calm, his eyes cool and calculating. I sensed that his presence was not coincidental. I waited until the bar grew quieter before approaching him. "I'm Brandon Hayes," I said, my voice low and resolute. "I'm here to collect the debt of every lie that shattered my life." His eyes met mine without flinching, and for a moment, the air hung heavy with unspoken threats. We exchanged a few terse words. He admitted that he had been involved in orchestrating the secret trips and had even helped cover up some of the financial irregularities. His tone was cold and detached, as if discussing a minor inconvenience rather than a decade-long betrayal. I didn't waste any time. The confrontation quickly escalated into a tense exchange, and although no physical fight erupted that night, the damage was done. I left with yet another name to add to my dossier and the chilling promise that I would not let this network of deceit continue unpunished. Over the next few days, my every waking moment was consumed by a single thought: the price of betrayal must be paid. I refined my plans, coordinated with my private investigator, and ensuring that every scrap of evidence was ironclad. Each new discovery only hardened my resolve further. I knew the road ahead would be long and treacherous, a descent into darkness from which I might never return. But as I drove home under the cool glow of early morning, the weight of every lie I'd uncovered and the promise of retribution surged within me. I vowed that my journey as an avenger would continue until every secret was exposed and every traitor made to pay the ultimate price. The path was lonely and dark, but I had no choice. My perfect family was nothing but an illusion, and I would see to it that no one else ever suffered as I had.